The night was supposed to be peaceful. A light drizzle coated the streets of Greenville, a quiet suburban town just outside Atlanta, Georgia. Inside a spacious two-story home, James Holloway parked his truck in the driveway, exhausted from a long day at the construction site. His boots were caked with dried cement, his flannel shirt damp with sweat. James wasn't supposed to be home this early, but a workplace accident had cut his shift short. His crew had packed up, and he decided to surprise his wife, Lillian. She had been distant lately, always talking about their church, about how much she needed guidance from Pastor Andrew Whitmore. His stomach rumbled as he stepped inside. The house was dimly lit, the scent of vanilla candles lingering in the air. Strange. Lillian usually left the TV on or played music while cooking. He frowned, setting his keys on the counter, straining his ears. Then he heard it. Soft whispers. A deep male voice. His pulse quickened. He followed the sound, creeping toward the slightly open bedroom door. His hands trembled as he pushed it open wider. And there she was, Lillian, his wife of 13 years, wrapped in the arms of their pastor. A sharp breath left his lips before he could stop it. The two lovers turned, their expressions twisting from pleasure to horror. "James!" Lillian gasped, scrambling for the sheets. But he wasn't listening. His vision blurred with fury. His body moved on its own. The gun in his waistband, a habit from his time in the military, felt cold in his grip. The shot rang out before he even realized he pulled the trigger. Lillian collapsed, clutching her chest. Blood spread across the white sheets. The pastor screamed, hands raised in surrender. James staggered back, his mind spinning. What had he done? Sirens howled in the distance. A neighbor must have heard the shot. His fingers loosened and the gun clattered to the floor. By the time the police arrived, James Holloway was kneeling beside his wife's body, hands in the air, tears streaking his face. The flashing red and blue lights painted the Holloway house in streaks of chaos. Officer Daniel Carter, a seasoned cop with over 2 decades on the force, was the first to step inside. His gun was drawn, but the scene before him was already still, except for the quiet sobs of the man kneeling beside the bed. James Holloway was in shock. His hands trembled in the air as 2 officers rushed toward him, shouting orders. He didn't resist when they forced him onto his stomach and snapped cold steel cuffs around his wrists. She was with him," James mumbled, his voice hollow. "In my house. I didn't think, I just—" Officer Carter glanced at the bed. Lillian Holloway lay still, blood seeping into the mattress. Her eyes were half open, frozen in an expression of shock. The other man in the room, Pastor Andrew Whitmore, was backed against the far wall, his hands raised as if the gun were still pointed at him. He was shaking violently, his mouth opening and closing without words. "We need an ambulance," another officer called out from the radio, but Carter knew it was pointless. He'd seen enough bodies to know when someone wasn't coming back. James didn't resist as they pulled him to his feet and read him his rights. He didn't fight as they led him through the house, past the gawking neighbors who had gathered on the front lawn. The drizzle had stopped, but the air was thick with humidity. As they loaded him into the back of the squad car, a detective arrived on the scene. Detective Marcus Reed had seen murders before. Too many. But something about this one didn't sit right. The moment he stepped into the house, he felt it. A tension that went beyond a crime of passion. Carter filled him in quickly. Husband came home, caught the wife cheating with their pastor, shot her once in the chest. Pastor's shaken up but unharmed. Reed nodded, running a hand over his clean-shaven jaw. He was in his early 40s, tall and solid, with sharp eyes that didn't miss much. He looked around the bedroom, taking in the details. The blood, the position of the body, the gun on the floor, the pastor still trembling against the wall. He turned to Officer Carter. "Where's the husband now?" "Being taken to the station." He didn't resist. Reed nodded. That made sense. If James Holloway had truly snapped in the heat of the moment, the guilt was probably already sinking in. But something gnawed at him. He walked over to the bed, crouching down beside Lillian's body. The wound was clean, a single shot to the chest. But there was something odd about the way she was lying, almost as if she had turned toward the shooter before being hit. He glanced back at the pastor. You were here when it happened? Pastor Whitmore swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, he walked in, saw us, and he pulled the gun and fired. His voice was shaky. Understandable. But Reed had heard enough liars in his time to recognize the signs. The detective stood up, scanning the room again. Something didn't add up. He just didn't know what. Yet. Detective Marcus Reed leaned against the station's interrogation room doorway, watching James Holloway through the one-way glass. The man sat motionless, his hands still trembling, his gaze empty. Reed had seen plenty of killers before, some cold and calculated, others drowning in regret. James was the latter, but even regret didn't always mean the whole truth had been told. He sighed and turned toward Officer Carter. How's the pastor? Shaken up, but he gave his statement. Says it was exactly what it looked like. Husband walks in, catches them, fires the shot. Reed frowned. And you believe that? Carter hesitated. I mean, yeah, it fits. Fits too perfectly. Carter raised a brow. You think there's more to it? Reed didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped into the interrogation room, dropping a case file onto the metal table in front of James. The sound made the man flinch. James slowly lifted his gaze. His eyes were bloodshot, his face lined with exhaustion. He looked like a man who had just lost everything. Reed pulled out a chair and sat across from him. James, he said calmly, tell me exactly what happened. James swallowed. I told the officers already. Tell me again. James exhaled shakily. I came home early. I wasn't supposed to be there. Walked in, heard them talking, laughing. I went upstairs and I saw them. His fists clenched against the table. She was in bed with him. Our bed. I lost it. The gun was already on me. I always carry it after work. I pulled it out. He choked on his words. I didn't think. I just shot. Reed studied him. There was no doubt in his mind that James was telling the truth, at least part of it. But something still felt off. What did Pastor Whitmore do? Reed pressed. James blinked, as if the question confused him. He jumped back, looked scared out of his mind, kept his hands up. He didn't fight. He didn't try to stop you? James shook his head. Reed tapped the case file. You've served in the military, right? Yeah, you know how to shoot. James nodded, looking away. Reed flipped open the file and slid a photo forward. It was of Lillian's body, the bullet wound clearly visible. One shot straight to the chest, direct hit. He watched James' reaction closely. James's jaw tightened. I just aimed and fired. Reed leaned in. A man in blind rage, snapping in the moment. He doesn't fire just one shot, especially not a perfect one. James's fingers twitched. His breath quickened. What are you saying? I'm saying, Reed continued, that this looks less like a crime of passion and more like someone making sure the job got done right. James's face went pale. You think I planned this? I think there's more to this story than you or the pastor are telling me. Reed folded his arms. And I intend to find out what. The door opened and Officer Carter stepped in. Detective, forensics report just came in. You're going to want to see this. Reed sighed, pushing back his chair. He gave James one last look before leaving the room. Carter handed him the folder in the hallway. Something weird about the angle of the shot, he said. They're saying Lillian wasn't lying down when she was hit. Reed frowned. Then what? She was kneeling. Reed's blood ran cold. If she was kneeling, then maybe James wasn't the only one holding a gun that night, and maybe someone else had more to hide. Holloway walked in, found you in bed with his wife, and shot her. That's what you said. He tapped the folder. But if that's true, why did you handle the gun? Whitmore licked his lips, his hands shaking. Reed leaned forward. You didn't tell me the whole story, Pastor. I think James shot his wife. But I also think you were involved before that happened. Whitmore's breath hitched. That's ridiculous, is it? Reed raised an eyebrow. Tell me something. Why was Lillian kneeling when she was shot? The pastor froze. Reed's gaze sharpened. James says he walked in and shot her out of rage. But the forensics report says she was kneeling. That tells me someone else was controlling the situation before James even pulled the trigger. Whitmore's lip trembled. I, Reed didn't let up. Were you threatening her, Pastor? Was she begging for something before she was killed? Whitmore's breathing turned shallow. You don't understand. Reed slammed his hand on the desk. Then make me understand. Tears welled up in the pastor's eyes. He swallowed hard, glancing away. Reed knew that look. The look of a man cornered. Did you kill her? Reed asked, his voice low and cutting. Whitmore shook his head violently. No, no, I swear, I didn't shoot her. But you were involved. The pastor hesitated. Then in a whisper he said, yes. Reed leaned back, his mind racing. Whitmore didn't pull the trigger, but he knew more than he had let on. And now Reed was going to uncover the whole truth. Pastor Andrew Whitmore sat frozen in his chair, his fingers gripping the edge of his desk as if it was the only thing keeping him from collapsing. Detective Marcus Reed didn't blink, didn't move, didn't give him a moment to gather himself. Start talking, Reed said, his voice sharp. What exactly happened that night? Whitmore swallowed hard, his eyes darting toward the door like a trapped animal. Pastor, Reed warned, if you lie to me again, I'll charge you with obstruction. And if I find out you pulled that trigger, you're going away for murder. So tell me the truth now. Whitmore inhaled shakily. I didn't kill her, but you were involved. A slow nod. Then tell me how. The pastor let out a shaky breath. Lillian? She found out about the money. The 60 grand? Yes, Whitmore admitted. She confronted me about it 2 weeks ago. Said she was going to tell the church board. I begged her not to. I told her I'd fix it. I even swore I'd pay it back, but she didn't believe me. Reed folded his arms. So you were desperate, Whitmore hesitated. Yes, Reed narrowed his eyes. Desperate enough to kill? No, Whitmore shook his head. I swear to God, detective, I didn't plan for any of this to happen. His breathing grew ragged. That night, James wasn't supposed to come home. Lillian invited me over, said we needed to talk. Talk? Reed scoffed. Is that what we're calling it? The pastor's face darkened with shame. We were already involved, but she insisted we meet that night. She said she had made a decision about us. Reed arched a brow. And what was that decision? Whitmore clenched his fists. She wanted to leave James. Silence stretched between them. She was done with the marriage, Whitmore continued. She wanted to go public with our relationship. Said we couldn't keep sneaking around. She told me she loved me, that she wanted to start over. But she also, his voice cracked. She also said she was still going to the church board about the missing money. Reed exhaled. There it was. Lillian had backed Whitmore into a corner. She was willing to leave her husband for him, but she wasn't going to stay silent about his theft. Let me guess, Reed said. You weren't happy about that. Whitmore's hands shook. I tried to change her mind. I begged her, but she said it was the right thing to do. His eyes filled with regret. That's when I got angry. I told her if she did this, she'd ruin me. I told her she was throwing everything away. She told me she didn't care. Reed watched him closely. And then what? Whitmore hesitated. I grabbed my gun. Reed's blood ran cold. You were armed? Whitmore shut his eyes. It was in my bag. I wasn't thinking. I just wanted to scare her. He swallowed hard. I told her not to go to the board, that it wasn't just me who'd suffer. James would too. The church would turn on him. Their friends would judge him. I told her we could find another way, but she refused. Reed's voice hardened. So you forced her to kneel? Whitmore's breath hitched. I just wanted to make her listen. Reed slammed his fist on the desk. You held her at gunpoint, Pastor. Tears rolled down Whitmore's face. I didn't mean to hurt her, I swear. But someone did. Whitmore's voice dropped to a whisper. That's when James came in. Reed held his breath. I didn't see him at first, Whitmore continued, his voice trembling. I was too focused on Lillian. She was kneeling, crying, begging me to put the gun away. Then suddenly, James was behind me. Reed's pulse quickened. What did he do? I felt him grab me. He tackled me to the ground. The gun went flying. He saw Lillian kneeling, saw the fear in her eyes, and Whitmore let out a shaky breath. He grabbed his own gun. Reed's stomach twisted. And then he fired. Whitmore nodded slowly. One shot, right to the chest. Silence filled the room. James thought I was the only villain in the room, Whitmore whispered. But by the time he realized what he'd done, it was too late. Reed exhaled. So that was it. Lillian had been caught between two men who both claimed to love her, one desperate, the other furious. And in the end, she paid the price. Reed stood, his expression unreadable. You tampered with the gun, didn't you? Whitmore nodded. After James shot her, he froze. I grabbed his gun, wiped it down. I wanted to protect myself. I needed to make sure my name wasn't dragged into this. He wiped his face with shaking hands. But it didn't matter. I was guilty either way. Reed nodded. Yes, he was. Now all that was left was getting James Holloway to admit his part, because no matter how much regret he carried, he still pulled the trigger. Detective Marcus Reed sat across from James Holloway in the dimly lit interrogation room. The man was slouched in his chair, his hands cuffed in front of him, his eyes hollow and bloodshot. He hadn't spoken much since his arrest, but now, with the truth out in the open, Reed was giving him one last chance. You lied to me, James. Reed's voice was calm but firm. You told me you walked in, saw your wife cheating, and shot her in a fit of rage. But that wasn't the full story, was it? James kept his eyes down, staring at the table. Reed leaned forward. We know what really happened. Whitmore was already there, holding Lillian at gunpoint. You tackled him, his gun flew across the room, and then you grabbed your own gun and shot your wife. James flinched but still said nothing. Reed pressed on. Lillian was kneeling, wasn't she? Not because she was guilty, but because she was terrified. He let the words hang in the air. You didn't kill her because of the affair. You killed her because you saw the fear in her eyes, and you thought she was afraid of you. James finally looked up, his jaw tightening. Reed didn't let him stop. You thought she was afraid of what you might do, not of Whitmore, not of anyone else, just you. James's face twisted in pain. His breathing grew uneven. I know what that feels like, Reed continued. You spent years loving her, protecting her, providing for her, and in that moment, when she looked at you, all you saw was fear. A strangled sob escaped from James's throat. Reed nodded. There it was. The truth finally breaking through. James sucked in a sharp breath. His voice came out broken. I didn't mean to. But you did, Reed said softly. Tears rolled down James's face as his shoulders shook. I saw her kneeling there crying, and he squeezed his eyes shut. I didn't think. I just reacted. Reed exhaled slowly. And that's why she's dead. James buried his face in his hands. I loved her. I believe you, Reed said. But love doesn't erase what you did. James let out a shaky breath. He sat in silence for a long time before finally whispering, What happens now? Reed sat back. That's up to the courts. But with your confession, manslaughter is a lot more likely than first-degree murder. James nodded weakly. And Whitmore? He'll answer for his part too, Reed said. He may not have pulled the trigger, but he pushed everything to the breaking point. James let out a bitter laugh. And to think, he was supposed to be a man of God. Reed stood up, knocking on the door for the guards to take James away. As they led him out, the broken man turned back one last time. Detective? James's voice was hoarse. Reed looked at him. Do you believe in forgiveness? Reed considered the question for a long moment. Then finally, he said, That's not for me to decide. James nodded, then allowed himself to be led away. The case was closed. James Holloway was charged with voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Pastor Andrew Whitmore, for his part, was charged with unlawful imprisonment and obstruction of justice. His career was over, his reputation destroyed. But none of it would bring Lillian Holloway back. As Detective Reed sat in his office, staring at the case files, he let out a slow breath. There were no winners in this case, just a broken family, ruined lives, and the weight of the truth. He closed the file for the last time. Justice had been served. But at what cost?